The Inheritance Test, How I Exposed My Family's Darkest Secrets and Took It All, by the Spoken Chronicles. Part 1. My grandfather was a billionaire. You'd never know it from the way he dressed, flannel shirts, beat-up sneakers, and a rusted-out Ford truck that somehow kept running. But the man built an empire from scratch. Real estate, logistics, a little early tech investment. By the time I was old enough to understand what money was, I already knew he had more of it than entire towns. He also didn't trust easily or forgive easily. He had 3 children, my dad and his 2 siblings, Uncle Ray and Aunt Sheila, and from what I heard growing up, none of them lived up to his standards. They tried riding his coattails, launching doomed businesses and asking for money as a loan. Granddad helped them once, maybe twice, but after that he cut them off. I, however, was different. I didn't ask for money. I asked questions. I visited him every Saturday since I was 13 just to listen to his stories and talk business. I got my first job at 15, saved every penny and didn't tell anyone, not even him, that I was using it to buy cheap stock shares in one of his smallest companies. By the time I turned 24, I'd graduated business school, had no debt, and owned a minor stake in his empire. He started introducing me at board meetings. He called me the only one in the family who knows the value of a dollar. My cousins, they hated it. Especially Trevor, Aunt Sheila's son, the golden grandson until I came along. Trevor was arrogant, entitled, and obsessed with image. He wore expensive watches he couldn't afford, leased cars with his mother's credit, and acted like Granddad's approval was his birthright. When Granddad had a mild heart attack, he pulled me aside and said, "I want to do something before I go, something to see where people really stand." He called it the Inheritance Test. He drafted a will but didn't file it with the lawyer. Instead, he handed out copies to all of us, his 3 kids and 5 grandkids, and said, "This is my final draft. Nothing's official yet, just something I'm thinking about." In the version I got, I was listed as the majority heir. I would receive control of the family trust, voting power in the companies, and the lion's share of assets. The others, scattered properties, minor stock payouts, and a few gilt gifts. The family didn't take it well. My aunt called me the next day to accuse me of manipulating a dying man. Uncle Ray went quiet. Trevor, he smiled. He actually smiled and said, "Congrats, big shoes to fill." But I knew him better than that, and Granddad did too. A week after Granddad shared the draft will, everything changed. At first, it was subtle. Aunt Sheila suddenly became the dutiful daughter, visiting daily with casseroles and fake smiles. Uncle Ray tried to rope Granddad into a new real estate deal when he clearly didn't understand. Trevor, he played it cool, too cool. "Hey," he said to me one afternoon, "maybe it's a good thing you running things. You've always been sharper than the rest of us." I didn't trust a word. A few days later, Granddad fell ill again. This time it was sudden, not another heart attack, but something that left him dizzy, disoriented. He insisted it was a stomach bug. I wasn't so sure. Then I noticed his pills looked different, slightly off in color. I brought it up to the nurse he trusted, the one who'd been with him for years. She checked the prescription bottle, frowned, and ran a test. The medication had been tampered with. My blood ran cold. We confronted the family. Everyone denied it. They were shocked, offended, and disgusted that I would accuse anyone. Trevor called it a desperate power grab. But Granddad was no fool. He'd suspected something, which is why he installed security cameras throughout the house after his first heart scare. Not obvious ones, hidden, motion-activated. Together we reviewed the footage from the past week. And there it was, Trevor, in Granddad's private bathroom, switching out a bottle of pills for another. He even had the audacity to smirk at the mirror when he left. We called the police. They took the evidence seriously. Tampering with medication, especially for a man with heart issues, is attempted murder at worst, felony endangerment at best. But Granddad stopped them. "Not yet," he said. "I want to see how far he'll go." And that's when the plan changed. We swapped the pills back, replaced the footage on the visible cameras with fake footage from an earlier week. Granddad pretended to be weaker, sicker, confused. He started talking nonsense in front of the family, claiming he wasn't sure about the will and maybe needed to change it. And just like that, they moved in for the kill. 3 days later, Granddad fell down the stairs. Minor injuries, nothing serious. But it was enough to get him hospitalized. That night, someone broke into his office. The hidden camera caught it all. Trevor and Aunt Sheila rifling through drawers, trying to find the original draft will. They found it, the one Granddad had labeled as final. But what they didn't know, that version was fake. A carefully planted decoy that left everything to Sheila and Trevor. I watched on the feed as they grinned like wolves. They took the fake will and left. Within 48 hours, Granddad's attorney, who was in on the plan, received a new official will, signed and notarized, delivered by Aunt Sheila herself. Dated that very night. She claimed Granddad wanted to revise things before his health declined further. He smiled politely and said nothing. We waited, and then we struck. It took less than a week for Trevor and Aunt Sheila to start celebrating. Granddad was still in the hospital recovering from the fall, but they were already acting like they owned the place. Sheila moved into the main house. Trevor showed up in a brand new car, even though he had no money 2 weeks prior. They started making changes, firing staff, canceling donations Granddad had supported for years, and bragging about how the empire was finally coming home. But they didn't know they were standing on a minefield. First, we sent copies of the fake will they'd submitted to Granddad's legal team to a handwriting analyst, one that Granddad had worked with before, in legal disputes involving forged contracts. It took him less than an hour to conclude that the signature wasn't consistent with Granddad's real one. Then we pulled up security footage from that night. The real footage, not the edited version we fed them. We had Trevor on camera removing the draft will, then sneaking into Granddad's study with Aunt Sheila, printing new documents, and practicing Granddad's signature using an old letter as a guide. Greg, Granddad's lawyer, compiled everything into a neat little legal package. Video evidence, the handwriting analysis, forensic timestamps from the computer they used, and testimony from the nurse and staff. All while Sheila and Trevor thought they'd won. Then came the bomb. A scheduled family meeting at the hospital, a charade they thought was just for estate logistics. Granddad sat up in bed and for the first time in weeks spoke with full clarity. "I know what you did," he said, looking directly at Trevor. The room went dead silent. Sheila tried to laugh it off. "Dad, you've been confused lately. You must be misremembering things." He gestured to the door. Greg the lawyer walked in with a folder and a tablet already cued to the surveillance footage. They watched the whole thing in full HD. Trevor's face turned white. Sheila's mouth fell open. Granddad waited until it was over, then said, "I could press charges, attempted fraud, evidence tampering, elder abuse, maybe even attempted homicide for the pills. But that's not what I'm going to do." He paused. "I'm going to destroy you instead." Greg pulled out the real will, officially notarized, filed weeks earlier, airtight. Trevor and Sheila were removed as heirs entirely. Not only that, but Granddad had filed a restraining order against both of them, barring them from coming within 500 feet of him, his properties, or any of the family businesses. He turned to the rest of us, my father, Uncle Ray, my cousins, and said, "Anyone who helped them, who stayed quiet while they tried to poison and rob me, will get nothing. I'm not dying confused. I'm dying clear." And with that, it was over, but not quite. They didn't take it well. Trevor stormed out of the hospital room, knocking over a chair and shouting something about lawyers and defamation. Aunt Sheila followed him, tears in her eyes, but not the kind that come from grief. Hers were the tears of entitlement denied. They filed a lawsuit within a week, claimed Granddad had been coerced, that I had manipulated him, falsified the evidence, brainwashed the staff. Their case didn't even make it to court. Why? Because Trevor had emailed himself a scan of the forged will from Granddad's own computer, with the timestamp and his own initials in the file name. Open, shut, stupid. Within a month, the judge not only dismissed their claim, but ruled it as a malicious attempt to defraud an elderly man. Sheila lost her nursing license. Trevor was ordered to pay legal fees. They were disgraced, but Granddad wasn't finished. 2 weeks before he passed, he summoned me to his hospital room one last time. He looked tired, thinner, but there was still steel behind his eyes. "You passed the test," he said. I sat beside him. It didn't feel like a test. He smiled weakly. "The ones that matter never do." He handed me an envelope. Inside were the keys to his office, a handwritten note, and a legal declaration. I was now the executor of his estate, not my father, not his lawyers, me. "I want you to build something better," he said. "Not just wealth, legacy." Those were his last words to me. He died 2 nights later, peacefully, with no monsters at his bedside. The funeral was private. Granddad had made it clear, no press, no spectacle. Trevor and Sheila weren't invited. We didn't need a scene. They'd already made fools of themselves in public. What came next surprised everyone except me. The real will didn't just name me executor. It restructured the entire family empire. The companies weren't simply handed down. They were reorganized under a foundation, one that I would chair, with the purpose of funding scholarships, supporting ethical business education, and investing in startups run by underrepresented founders. The family still got payouts if they met strict annual requirements. Service, merit, education. You couldn't just be born into the money anymore. You had to earn it, and if you didn't, you got nothing. Trevor and Aunt Sheila were permanently disqualified. No access, no appeal. The media caught wind of it a few weeks later. Headlines popped up like wildfire. Billionaire heir disinherits greedy family in stunning will. Real-life succession. Grandson exposes family fraud in wild estate battle. They tried to spin it, claimed I orchestrated everything. But when the security footage went public, Greg leaked it, not me. Public opinion buried them. Trevor became a meme. Sheila was never heard from again. Last I checked, Trevor sells online marketing courses and motivational books on TikTok, and me? I stayed quiet. Let the money talk. 3 years later, the foundation is thriving. We've backed 2 startups that went national, given away over $12 million in scholarships, and created a new housing initiative for at-risk youth, named after Granddad. I still keep the forged will in my desk drawer, not out of spite, out of reminder. That when people show you who they are, you believe them. But when they show you what they'll do for money, you make sure they never touch it again.